Picture this. It's 1969, and Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Love is exploding across radio stations worldwide. Jimmy Page's guitar riff is burning through speakers, Robert Plant is wailing about making love, and millions of teenagers are losing their minds. The song becomes one of the most iconic rock anthems ever recorded. Platinum records pile up, money floods in, fame reaches stratospheric heights. But 7 years earlier, in a cramped Chicago recording studio, a giant of a man sat at his upright bass and watched Muddy Waters sing lyrics he'd written, "You Need Love." The song was called Same Melody, Same Words, Same Fire. The man's name was William James Dixon, and while the world called him Willie, history would remember him as the most exploited genius in blues history. If you love uncovering hidden legends like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to Legends Underrated, and tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Willie Dixon didn't just write songs. He built the entire foundation that rock and roll stands on. Hoochie Coochie Man, Little Red Rooster, Spoonful, Backdoor Man, I Just Want to Make Love to You. Over 500 compositions poured from his mind, each one a masterpiece of blues poetry. Muddy Waters, Howlin Wolf, Little Walter, Bo Diddley, Chuck Berry, every legend at Chess Records depended on Dixon's genius. He produced their sessions, arranged their music, played bass on their recordings, scouted new talent, and wrote the songs that defined an era. The Rolling Stones built their career covering his work. Eric Clapton worshipped at his altar. Led Zeppelin's entire first album featured his compositions. But while they became millionaires, Dixon sold his songs for $30 a piece and watched white executives pocket his royalties. This is the story of how one man created modern music and spent his life fighting to be recognized for it. July 1st, 1915, Vicksburg, Mississippi. William James Dixon entered a world designed to crush him before he learned to walk. He was the seventh child born to Daisy McKenzie and Charles Dixon, one of 14 children in a family where 7 siblings died at birth. Poverty wasn't just their condition, it was their inheritance. His father worked in a sawmill until he filed for divorce in 1912 on grounds of adultery. By 1913, it was final. Anderson Bell became Willie's stepfather, though rumors swirled that Bell might have been his biological father all along. But Vicksburg gave Willie something that poverty couldn't steal. His mother Daisy possessed a gift. She turned everything into rhymes, speaking in rhythmic poetry that danced through their small house on the northern edge of town. "Willie, come and eat your supper, quick, before your food gets colder. Remember what your mama told you." She'd rhyme instructions, warnings, jokes, love. The boy absorbed it all, storing rhythms and wordplay in his developing mind like ammunition for future battles. At 4 years old, Willie sang his first song at Springfield Baptist Church. His voice, even then, carried weight beyond his years. At 7, he stood transfixed watching Little Brother Montgomery's band, recognizing in their blues something that spoke directly to his soul. But the American South had different plans for a young black boy with dreams. By his early teens, Willie found himself working on Mississippi prison farms, introduced to the blues not through records or concerts, but through the work songs of men whose backs were broken by the same system that had enslaved their grandparents. A local carpenter named Theo Phelps recognized something special in Willie's bass voice. He brought him into the Union Jubilee Singers, a gospel quintet that performed weekly on Vicksburg's WQBC radio. Willie learned harmony, timing, stage presence. He learned how to make people feel something through sound alone. But Mississippi was a cage, and Willie Dixon was learning how to pick locks. 1936. Willie Dixon hopped a northbound train to Chicago, joining the Great Migration that saw millions of Black Americans flee Southern apartheid for industrial opportunities up north. He was 21 years old, 6 feet 6 inches tall, 250 pounds of lean muscle forged through years of brutal manual labor. He wasn't running to music, not yet. He was running to boxing. Chicago's gyms welcomed fighters who could take punishment and dish it back harder. Dixon had both qualities in abundance. He trained relentlessly, channeling the rage of Mississippi into his fists. 1937, barely a year after arriving in Chicago, Willie Dixon won the Illinois State Golden Gloves heavyweight championship in the novice division. He knocked out his opponents, turned professional, and even sparred with heavyweight champion Joe Louis. The legend goes that one opponent broke his own arm punching Dixon's midsection. The man was stoned, but boxing taught Dixon what America would keep teaching him: your talent means nothing if someone else controls your money. After just 4 professional fights, Dixon confronted his manager in the Illinois Boxing Commissioner's office, demanding the wages he'd earned. The argument exploded into violence. Dixon was suspended for 6 months. His handlers were expelled permanently. His boxing career died in that office, murdered by the same greed that would haunt him for the rest of his life. At a boxing gym, Dixon met a piano player named Leonard Baby Doo Caston. Between sparring sessions, they'd harmonize, 2 voices finding each other in the spaces between punches. Caston saw something in Dixon that Dixon hadn't fully recognized in himself. This man wasn't meant to hurt people. He was meant to make them feel. Caston built Dixon his first bass from a tin can and 1 string. It was crude, primitive, perfect. Dixon's years singing bass in gospel groups made the transition natural. His massive hands, trained for violence, learned gentleness on the strings. 1939. Dixon and Caston formed the 5 Breezes, blending blues, jazz, and vocal harmonies in the style of the Ink Spots. They cut 8 sides for the Bluebird label in 1940. Dixon was finding his voice, his purpose. But then Pearl Harbor happened. When America entered World War II, Willie Dixon faced a choice that would define his character forever. The draft called his name. The nation demanded he fight. And Willie Dixon said no. He wasn't afraid. Fear had nothing to do with it. He was a conscientious objector, and his reasoning was crystal clear. I will not fight for a nation, he declared. Where institutionalized racism and racist laws are prevalent, why should he die overseas for freedom when he couldn't vote in Mississippi? Why should he defend democracy abroad when democracy didn't defend him at home? They imprisoned him for 10 months. 10 months of his prime taken by a country that would later steal his music, his credit, his money, but Dixon emerged with his principles intact. After his release, he formed the 4 Jumps of Jive, then he reunited with Caston, and together they created the Big 3 Trio. The Big 3 Trio changed the game. They brought harmony singing to blues, creating something sophisticated, urban, unmistakably Chicago. 1947 brought them a contract with Columbia Records, the major leagues of music. Dixon had arrived. He was recording for one of the biggest labels in America. Success was finally within reach. But success in the music industry has always been a trap designed to look like a trophy. Stories like these are why I built Legends Underrated. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more untold legends. 1951, Willie Dixon became a full-time employee at Chess Records, the label run by Polish immigrant brothers Leonard and Phil Chess. They hired him as a recording artist, but Dixon's talents were too vast to contain. By the time the paperwork was signed, he was already producing sessions, scouting talent, arranging songs, playing bass on recordings, and writing material for every major artist on the roster. Chess Records in the 1950s was the center of the blues universe. If you wanted to understand post-war Chicago blues, you studied what happened in that studio. And what happened in that studio was Willie Dixon 1954, Dixon wrote Hoochie Coochie Man for Muddy Waters. The song exploded. Over 75,000 copies sold, a massive number for blues at the time. The lyrics dripped with supernatural power and sexual magnetism. The gypsy woman told my mother, before I was born, I got a boy. Child's coming, gonna be a son of a gun. Gonna make pretty women jump and shout. Then the world wanna know what this all about. It became Muddy Waters' signature song, the track that defined his entire career. Dixon sold it to Chess Records for $30. 1955, My Babe, written for Little Walter, hit #1 on the R&B charts. Dixon's first chart topper. 1956, Bo Diddley took Dixon's Pretty Thing into the R&B top 10. Muddy Waters climbed back up with Don't Go No Farther. Dixon was unstoppable. For Howlin Wolf, he wrote Evil, Backdoor Man, Spoonful, Wang Dang Doodle, Little Red Rooster, I Ain't Superstitious, songs that became the DNA of blues music. He played bass on Chuck Berry's early recordings. Maybelline, Sweet Little 16, rock and roll music, Johnny B, good. Willie Dixon's fingers were on the strings when rock and roll was being invented. He worked with Little Walter, Sonny Boy Williamson II, Otis Rush, Magic Sam, Buddy Guy, Coco Taylor. Every session, Dixon was there, the invisible architect, making everyone else sound legendary. The Chess Brothers paid him a salary and bought his songs outright for pocket change. Dixon's compositions were generating millions of dollars in revenue. He saw almost none of it. The publishing company Arc Music, owned by Chess, collected royalties that should have been Dixon's. He was creating American cultural monuments and living paycheck to paycheck. Late 1950s, Dixon left Chess in a dispute over money and spent time working with Cobra Records, producing some of the finest West Side blues ever recorded. But by 1960, he was back at Chess. They needed him too much. He needed the work too desperately. The cycle continued. Then the British invasion changed everything. 1964, a British rock band called the Rolling Stones released Little Red Rooster, and it hit #1 on the UK singles chart. Their debut album featured Dixon's I Just Want to Make Love to You. Young white musicians in England were obsessed with American blues, and Willie Dixon's songs were their holy texts. The Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, the Animals, all of them studied Dixon's compositions, recorded them, built their careers on them. Dixon began organizing the American Folk Blues Festival, bringing blues legends to Europe starting in 1962. For the first time, he experienced something extraordinary: respect. European audiences treated blues musicians like artists, like cultural treasures. In America, Dixon was a R with a bass. In London, he was a master. Young British musicians hung on his every word. At the Crawdaddy Club in London, Howlin Wolf, Sonny Boy Williamson, and Dixon sat together, singing and tapping rhythms, passing songs directly to kids like Brian Jones, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Jimmy Page. Dixon even made tapes for them, teaching them blues structures and lyrics. Kids would come and say they liked our music and want to sing our music. Dixon later explained, sometimes I'd write it out for them. Sometimes I'd put it on a tape. That's how the Rolling Stones and the Yardbirds got their songs. He was generous. He was proud. He had no idea how thoroughly they would profit from his generosity. 1967, Led Zeppelin formed. 1969, their debut album dropped, and it was a blues rock earthquake that shook the world. You Shook Me, I Can't Quit You Baby, both Willie Dixon compositions. Dixon's name appeared on the credits, but the money flowing into Led Zeppelin's pockets was a river compared to the trickle reaching him. Then there was Whole Lotta Love, the song that would define Led Zeppelin's legacy. That monster guitar riff, Plant's primal screaming, the sexual energy that made it one of the greatest rock songs ever recorded. Millions of copies sold worldwide. Radio stations played it endlessly. Generation after generation discovered it. But the lyrics came straight from Willie Dixon's You Need Love, recorded by Muddy Waters in 1962. The melody followed Dixon's blueprint. Page's riff was original, but Plant's words were theft. And for 16 years, nobody credited Willie Dixon. For 16 years, Led Zeppelin collected every penny, but Willie Dixon's body was betraying him. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, diabetes ravaged his system. The disease, brutal and relentless, destroyed his circulation. He tried to keep touring, keep writing, keep fighting. But in 1977, doctors delivered devastating news. They had to amputate his right leg. The giant, who once knocked out Golden Gloves opponents and lifted a bass with casual strength, was now missing a limb. He was 62 years old and watching his body crumble. That same year, 1977, Dixon did something radical. He and Muddy Waters sued Arc Music, the publishing company that had stolen decades of royalties. They won. With the settlement money, Dixon founded his own publishing company, Hoochie Coochie Music. Finally, at 62, Willie Dixon owned his own work, but Led Zeppelin still hadn't paid. January 11th, 1985, Willie Dixon filed a lawsuit against Led Zeppelin, claiming Whole Lotta Love had plagiarized You Need Love. Actually, it was his daughter who first noticed. She heard Whole Lotta Love on the radio and immediately recognized her father's words. She played it for him, and Dixon knew. He'd been waiting 16 years for this moment. Led Zeppelin's lawyers fought hard. They tried to argue the songs were different enough, that influences shouldn't be credited, that Dixon waited too long. But in court, even the judge noticed the lyrical similarities. February 5th, 1987, they settled out of court. Dixon received an undisclosed sum and songwriting credit on Whole Lotta Love. Finally, Robert Plant later admitted the theft with a shrug. Page's riff was Page's riff. Plant said, "I just thought, well, what am I gonna sing? That was it, a nick, now happily paid for. Happily paid for." As if 16 years of stolen credit and money was just a minor bookkeeping error. But Dixon wasn't finished. He'd spent his life building other people's legends. Now he'd build something that outlasted them all. 1981, Willie Dixon founded the Blues Heaven Foundation. Its mission was simple: protect blues musicians from the exploitation Dixon had endured, secure copyrights, fight for unpaid royalties, provide musical instruments to schools, preserve the legacy and history of blues music. Dixon poured his lawsuit settlements into the foundation, determined that future generations wouldn't suffer what he had suffered. The blues are the roots, Dixon explained in his gentle, profound way, and the other musics are the fruits. It's better keeping the roots alive because it means better fruits from now on. The blues are the roots of all American music. As long as American music survives, so will the blues. 1980, Dixon was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame at its inaugural ceremony. 1988, he signed with Bug, Capitol Records, and released Hidden Charms. The album showcased Dixon's voice, still powerful, still honest, still telling truths that made people uncomfortable. 1989, he won a Grammy Award for Best Traditional Blues Recording. The same year, his autobiography, I Am the Blues, The Willie Dixon Story, was published. Willie Dixon finally told his story in his own words. He toured internationally despite missing a leg, despite his failing health, despite everything the world had done to break him. In 1982, he and his wife Marie moved to Glendale, California, seeking a warmer climate to ease his suffering. The diabetes never stopped. The pain never stopped. But neither did Willie Dixon. January 29th, 1992, Burbank, California. Willie Dixon's heart finally gave out. He was 76 years old. His body, which had carried him from Mississippi poverty to Chicago glory, from boxing rings to recording studios, from stolen songs to hard-won justice, stopped. This twist shocked the world. And if you never want to miss stories like this, make sure you're subscribed to Legends Underrated. And don't forget to like the video if this story moved you. They carried his body through the streets where he grew up in a horse-drawn hearse. They buried him in Burr Oak Cemetery in Alsip, Illinois. Surrounded by the city that had given him everything and taken even more, his widow Marie took over the Blues Heaven Foundation. In 1993, she purchased the original Chess Records building at 2120 South Michigan Avenue, and in 1997, she reopened it as the headquarters for Blues Heaven Foundation, fulfilling Willie's dream. 1994, Willie Dixon was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the Early Influences category. 2013, both Dixon and his grandson Alex Dixon were inducted into the Chicago Blues Hall of Fame together. 2007, a marker was placed on the Mississippi Blues Trail in Vicksburg, the town that had tried to destroy him. Cedric the Entertainer portrayed him in Cadillac Records, a 2008 film about chess records. Rolling Stone ranked him the 12th greatest bass player in history and called him one of the most influential bluesmen who ever lived. They placed him 51st on their list of the 100 greatest songwriters of all time. Over 500 songs, 500 pieces of American culture. Hoochie Coochie Man, recorded by Muddy Waters, Jimi Hendrix, Chuck Berry, Eric Clapton, Steppenwolf, and countless others. Spoonful, covered by Cream, becoming a psychedelic blues epic. Backdoor Man, immortalized by the Doors on their debut album, I Just Want to Make Love to You, reinterpreted by Etta James, the Rolling Stones, Foghat. Every rock band you ever loved built their sound on Willie Dixon's architecture. He created the language that white musicians used to become gods. He wrote the songs that defined entire genres. He produced the sessions that changed music forever. And for most of his life, he fought just to be credited, just to be paid, just to be remembered. Willie Dixon didn't want to be famous. He wanted to be recognized. He wanted the roots acknowledged before everyone celebrated the fruits. He wanted younger musicians to know who built the foundation they were standing on. Today, every time someone plays Whole Lotta Love, Willie Dixon's name is there in the credits. Every time a musician covers Hoochie Coochie Man, they're channeling his genius. Every time someone picks up a bass and plays blues, they're walking a path Willie Dixon carved. The Blues Heaven Foundation still operates today, still fighting for exploited artists, still preserving the history Dixon dedicated his life to protecting. His legacy isn't just the songs, though those alone would be enough for immortality. His legacy is the proof that even when the system is designed to steal everything from you, even when they take your money, your credit, your body, your dignity, they cannot steal what you created. They cannot erase what you built. Willie Dixon was the greatest blues songwriter who ever lived. Next to Muddy Waters, he was the most influential person in shaping post-World War II Chicago blues. Without him, there is no Howlin Wolf sound. There is no Muddy Waters legacy. There is no Rolling Stones, no Led Zeppelin, no rock and roll as we know it. He was the architect, and we're all still living in the house he built. The blues are the roots. Remember that. Remember Willie Dixon. Remember where your favorite songs really came from. And remember that justice delayed isn't justice denied. Not if you fight long enough to see it.